So this week we're diving into Ephesians chapter 2, verses 11 through 18. And as I read through these verses, I honestly have to say I was taken back to my experience in high school, where we had this obvious pecking order in the context of the people groups in our high school. You had your cool kids, you had your athletes, you had your smart kids, you had all these other people trying to figure out their place, and a very real understanding of having this pecking order from top to bottom. And we struggled finding our place in that. And the reality is of our culture is that there really is a pecking order in the context of so many things that we do in the context of our families and our jobs at work, in the context of even our families, the people who are kind of the point people, the funny people, the ones that others look to. And so when we dive into Ephesians chapter 2, starting in verse 11, Paul really is talking about this type of pecking order and how the good news of Jesus, the gospel of Jesus, really is tearing down that pecking order, specifically in the context of this dynamic relationship between Jew and Gentile. That's what he's looking at. He's saying, hey, for many years, Jews, you were God's chosen people. And the idea, they saw themselves as being the preferred people. But when Jesus came and the cross happened and the resurrection happened, Jesus said he came to tear down this wall of hostility between these two people groups. And the idea is that there's now one family. We've talked about this in the last several weeks. There's one family that they've been adopted as sons and daughters, all of them. They now all have an inheritance. They all have access to God. And so in this, there's now this equality, and the idea of a pecking order has to go out the window. They're all equal in the eyes of God. And so the first thing we have to wrestle through for ourselves is, what type of pecking order have we created in the context of our lives, whether it's people who we just view as being different cultures, different races, different backgrounds, or just different people in general. In what areas do we view ourselves as being better than, or we view people who are different than us as maybe not being like us, as maybe being less than us? And so we have to be honest about that and not just have a mental assent to that. The second piece is that this pecking order coming down means we have to change our lifestyle. So when Jesus came, we're told in Philippians 2 that, he was basically equal to God, but he did not choose that equality with God, but he took the very nature of a servant. He was equal with God, pecking order, but he chose the nature of a servant. Then he comes to his disciples and takes off his outer garment and says, hey, I'm going to be your servant as I wash your feet. And the disciples, they were struggling with this. But he says, I have to do this for you. And so it's a model. Now, as I have done for you, you are to do to others. And so as we dive into Ephesians chapter 2 tonight, and we talk about the tearing down of the pecking order because of the good news of Jesus and all of us being equal in the eyes of God and having access to God, we have to recognize what are those areas of our own life where pecking order have come into play, and we need to dismantle those. But secondarily, saying, now what are we proactively doing? What does it look like for us to embrace this lifestyle of Jesus, this nature of a servant? The idea is that we become a servant to all, that we model it. And the idea for us is the world, honestly, is looking for a church who would engage and embrace this model of servanthood. Because as we find our greatest joy in serving others, then we will find joy as others in community with us begin to serve us. And it's this beautiful, beautiful picture of the lifestyle of Jesus, equality in the context of his family, as we're all mutually serving one another. And so for us tonight, let's just take time and begin to name some of these areas of pecking order in our lives, the things that God wants to dismantle, and what are the steps we need to take to choose service of one another.